Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wahdahu wassalatu wassalamu ala man la nabiyya ba'dahu. Participants, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Welcome to this webinar, Zakah webinar of SANZAF and TAIF. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for us so that we do the best and learn from one another. A saying, ta'allam falaysa al-mar'u yuladu aliman. Learn and acquire knowledge because no one is born a learned person. Walaysa akhul ilm kaman huwa jahilan. And those who have knowledge is not the same as those who are not knowledgeable. Let's start, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let's look at Zakah, in the spiritual dynamics and the Maqasid of Zakah. Our contents will be as follows, and the contents of today's presentation of myself will be about the virtues of Zakah, the meaning of Zakah, the Maqasid of Zakah, and then Maulana Ibrahim Makhabuti will do the fiqh of Zakah. Let's look at the importance of Zakah. Zakah is that particular pillar of Islam where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instituted Zakah as one of the pillars of Islam. Besides being a pillar of Islam, it's also an act of ibadah. Like salah, like saum, fasting, like hajj, Zakah is also a pillar of Zakah, also being an act of ibadah. It is not you get, ibadatul maliyah and ibadatul jasadiyah, jismiyah, where you get a physical ibadah and a monetary ibadah. And Zakah is that monetary ibadah. The purpose of Zakah. First of all, the purpose of Zakah is a spiritual purification. Spiritually, by paying Zakah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala purify our souls. It's also purification of your wealth. You take out what doesn't belong to you, and what is left is yours. What left becomes your wealth. But Zakah, the portion taken out is like purifying whatever is left become your wealth, because it is not always that all the wealth that Allah has given you is all belongs to you. Becomes a certain amount, that amount was now zakatable, will now be given taken out the zakah part of it, and that makes it so beautiful that most of the money left becomes your wealth. It's also very important that zakah is a development and of the relationship between the payer of zakah and the giver of and the receiver of zakah. That relationship between the two, those who have and those who have lesser and those who don't have, zakah brings those two together and creating a relationship between those who have and those who have less. It is also one of the things, it plays a major role in the Islamic economy. When the money rolls, it is actually increasing the economy, and also as Muslims, the economy of the Islamic world. It changes and it increases the economy in the way that we are using zakah. And when people hoard money, the money becomes, simple terms, money is only beneficial when it is used. When it is not used, it lies there in the cupboard and in the drawer, and that makes sure it does not give you the best benefit of your wealth. Let's look at some of the misunderstanding, the misconceptions between people with regard to zakah. People always think that I paid already zakah. Last year I paid my zakah, or 5 years ago I paid my zakah. Yes, we also made salah last year and yesterday. But zakah is a continuous ibadah as long as you are by the means and you have all the conditions to pay zakah. Zakah is annually an ibadah. Like Ramadan comes annually, and like salah comes every time of salah, zakah also becomes annually. For certain things on wealth, zakah is an annual basis. On other ways or other things, zakah becomes the whole is according to the specific wealth that you have, and you might pay every second year, you might pay every 7th year, like the olive trees, you pay on that whole. But it is an annual ibadah which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to pay our zakah. Second misconception people have, that is you have to inform the person that you are giving zakah to, it is zakah. If you know that the person is zakatable, you don't have to inform him what I'm giving you is zakah. Misperception or misunderstanding, it is not a must that you need to inform him that you are giving him is zakah. People who say that the 2.5% is the minimum that you can pay. This is one of the ibadahs. The more you give, the better for you. Yes, we can give more, but also important that it must be calculated correctly. Whatever is more, barakallah fikum, but your zakah, people think I can only give 2.5%. It's the minimum. That is the amount that you should pay your zakah on. What's also very important for those to understand is that zakah is not a tax. If it is a tax, it should have been by now grown from 1500 years ago. It would now have to grow to more than 2.5%. And no country and no government will cope with 2.5%. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't make zakah a tax. Allah made it a form of ibadah. So you also, the misunderstanding that people, we must pay in Ramadan. Yes, we encourage people to give in Ramadan because it is a month of blessings, a month of barakah, a month of goodness. But you should pay your zakah the time you became zakatable to pay zakah. So your whole might be before Ramadan. Your whole and your year of paying zakah might be much more earlier than only in the time of Ramadan. People have this misconception and the misunderstanding that everybody pays in Ramadan zakah. No, it is not according to that. It is actually when you are zakatable or when you are eligible to pay zakah, that time, a year later, your zakah becomes followed on yourself. Also, what important is, so if I pay in Ramadan, I still have to reconcile my books to make sure that I pay the full amount in Ramadan, if we take Ramadan as the good month and in everything. So people like to pay in zakah in Ramadan, barakallah fikum, but it is not a must that only you must pay in Ramadan. What is also important is when people didn't pay, must I make a repayment? Must I pay in the zakah which I did not pay in the time of Jahiliyyah or when I was in Dalala and I didn't pay zakah yet? Should I pay zakah in arrears? That is also our question. The people think that I didn't have hidayah that time, so I don't have to pay if I didn't pay. That is misconception. Zakah will be there annually, always followed on us. Let's take the next one. which is the history of Zakah. Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam in the second year of Hijrah, when he was in Medina, he actually started paying Zakah. Zakah doesn't come from any mufti or any alim or any person. Zakah is a guidance from the Quran and the Sunnah of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam. When a person pays Zakah, it is not a man-made pillar. It is a pillar from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How to work it out was guided by Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And this was the practices of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and the Khulafa al-Rashidin, those righteous Khalifas. They made the Zakah as a pillar, a practice of Zakah as an ibadah. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he came in Medina, in the time it was so important that people don't realize when they, after Hijrah, the Muslims were in disarray and there was no form of support. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made Zakah as the means of social development even for those who did not have anything after coming back coming to Medina from Mecca and became muhajirin. As we look at the moral and the significance of Zakah, first of all, we did say it's an ibadah. That means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to bless us. Allah will reward us for it. It brings us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And especially when a person becomes so, pays zakah, you are looking after the makhluk of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It brings you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when a person pays zakah. And also the meaning and the spiritual purification, of that habit of everything is mine. It shows you zakah inculcate into you to share. Zakah inculcate into you to care for the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is one of the most important parts of zakah, is creating that insaniyah in yourself towards the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It also purifies your wealth. Like we said before, it purifies the wealth which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. Allah made you the amana of that. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, and that is in Surah, in the 9th Surah, Ayah 103, where Allah says, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ وَصَلِّ عَلَيْهِمْ. Take from their wealth as a zakah, as a form of zakah, to purify them internally, purify their soul, purify their being, and purifies their wealth. وَصَلِّ عَلَيْهِمْ. And then after, for those who receive the zakah, Allah commands us, وَصَلِّ عَلَيْهِمْ, make dua for the person that pays zakah. Zakah also is a development, as a tool of development for the relationship between the payer of zakah and the receiver of zakah. The mustahiq, who the one is entitled to zakah, and the muzakki, the payer of zakah, it creates that ukhuwa, that brotherhood, where the receiver doesn't have a hasad manner against the one that pays zakah. And the person that pays zakah, knowing it's an ibadah, doesn't feel that I'm superior to the person who's receiving zakah. Zakah actually is a form of bringing those who have and those who don't have, or those who have less, bring them together as brothers in Islam. That is so important for us to understand, that as Muslims, our relationship, even though wealth, if I have wealth, doesn't make me superior to the receiver of zakah. And therefore, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala used to tell us, pay zakah, hasten paying zakah before the day comes when there is no one receiving or able to accept your zakah, because the person that accepts zakah is doing or receives zakah is doing those who pay zakah a favor. The other moral aspects and significance of zakah is it is a blessing from Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. First of all, the blessing is Allah has given you wealth. Secondly, when you pay zakah, it is a blessing from Allah who has guided you to fulfill the rights of paying zakah. Therefore, important after we pay zakah is to say Alhamdulillahi alladhi hadana lihada wa ma kunna linahtadiya lawla an hadana Allah. Thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it has guided me to pay my zakah. Because if it wasn't for Allah's guidance, we would not have been guided to do this ibadah of zakah. Zakah also creates a social security and way of where socially we don't allow people to feel or become beggars. In the social life, it's important that zakah be a form of ibadah and a form of way of seeing there's light after the dark tunnel. And at times, therefore, they say poverty breeds disbelief. Therefore, zakah is there to make sure that we don't disbelieve because of poverty. Also, zakah keeps a person away from sin, because I've just paid my zakah. I mean, I did my ibadah. I did fulfill one pillar of Islam. How can I do sin now after Allah has rewarded me for paying my zakah? The other part is, they also, when you pay zakah, it's really an assistance to the poor and needy, or those who are in a position to receive zakah. It's an assistance, but it's not only an assistance, it's an assistance by the money which Allah has commanded me, or the wealth that Allah has commanded me and you to assist somebody else. And when you assist somebody by paying or giving zakat to him, inna Allah fi awni abd ma dama al-abd fi awni akhi. Allah will always assist his slave as long as his slave assists his brother or sister. But by paying zakah, it is also the right of the person, or the poor person, or the needy person. It's his right to receive zakah. Therefore, part of the qualities of a real believer, one of the qualities of a real believer is وَفِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ, that they embrace that there is a right in his wealth that must go to the poor and the needy. One of the qualities of a strong, good believer is that he understands and he embraces that there is a right in his wealth that belongs to the poor and the needy. Okay, let's look at the virtues. If I go too fast, please stop me. Okay, look at the virtues. It means the reward of paying zakah or doing zakah as an act of ibadah. Remember, if a person pays his zakah due on the time on his wealth, it causes the evil to go away. It causes not only the evil, it causes catastrophe, any form of evil, it takes away. Therefore, Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the time of drought, used to tell the people, pay your zakah, because by not paying zakah, Allah withhold his blessings. And one of his blessings Allah withhold is the blessing of rain. The blessing of rain Allah withhold when people start not paying zakah. Any evil coming to you is because I did not pay my zakah. Zakah actually withhold any evil against you. Also, zakah, you gain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah say, you see my ibadah, my slaves, they are paying voluntarily. Nobody's forcing them. Nobody's standing behind them. And yet they take out the wealth and they give it as zakah. This is what makes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala very happy. Zakah, sadaqah, istighfar, salawat, and Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is one of the four things and the main things that makes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala very, very happy. So by paying zakah, you are making Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala happy. Also, zakah increases your wealth. Zakah increases your wealth, and it also protect you from losses. The hadith of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as-sadaqatu la yanqusul mal. Sadaqah and zakah does not decrease your wealth. It actually increases your wealth. As long as you give, so long Allah will give you. So you won't ever go in a loss. You won't ever lose something. And your wealth that you are giving as a ibadah, as a followed ibadah, Allah even promised, and that I will increase it. Man ja'a bihasanatin falahu ashru amsalha. Those who does any good deed, any beautiful good deed, Allah says, I will reward you bi ashri amsalha, tenfold. Wallahu yudha'ifu liman yasha. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can multiply it more and more according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wish and according to our intention of giving it. And at times a person gives it with a heavy heart, it might be lesser in the reward. When a person gives it out of pleasure, then Allah might reward you. Therefore Allah says, وَيُضَاعِفُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ. Allah can actually multiply it any amount of time. And also, paying zakah protects you from the wrath and the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The hadith of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, as-sadaqatu tasuddu ghadaba rabb wa tadfa'u maytata as-su. Sadaqah, zakah takes away the wrath and the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and will also prevent you from and protect you from a bad death. These are not the words of any person but Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Also, zakah is a shelter. It's a protection for yourself on the day of Qiyamah. Not even, you don't think about Jannah and Jahannam. On the day of Qiyamah, one of the people that will be standing in the shade of the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that person that gave with his right hand, but his left hand doesn't even know about. You didn't advertise it, yet you gave it, and you paid your dues, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala offers you like a VIP seat and next to his arsh, and in the shade of the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yawma la dhilla, that day when there will be no shade but the shade of the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the other things in the verses was, it protects you from misfortune, evil, calamities. This is the power of zakah to a person, not in the akhirah, in the dunya. In this world, it will protect you from misfortune. It will protect you from evil. It will protect you from any losses. Therefore, death becomes such an important ibadah in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because zakah is a financial ibadah. At times it becomes difficult for people to do it. Therefore, Allah reward a person so much because it's going against his nafs. is going against his wishes and it's normal. Shaitan will try and stop you in every corner not to pay zakah. But if you do it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards a person in so many ways when you pay your zakah. Let's look at the meaning of zakah, the word zakah. You get lafzan or lughatan, meaning means to grow. So if you give your wealth, what is left over will only grow. That is in the Arabic language, zakah yuzakki means to grow. In the Sharia meaning, zakah means to purify. The more you give, the more Allah purifies you. Ruhaniyya, spiritually, Allah purifies you. And it also in your maliyya, in the money that is left, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala purifies the money that after taking out the zakah, then you can do with the money as much and as well any way that you can or you want to do. And I think we don't realize how beautiful and how important Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has taught us how Muslims should care and have that care and that empathy for a next person, a next human being. Let's look at the Maqasid. Maqasid is the plural of Maqsad, the objective of zakah. And this is so important that a person think that it's only money I'm giving away. It's only wealth I'm giving away. It's only sharing my stock. One of the maqsad or the maqasid of zakah is, first of all, is to transform the life of the recipient. You are transforming a person from being a mustahiq, an entitled person towards zakah, to the transforming to a muzakki, to a person paying zakah. And we have seen in many, many ways how people were were given their haqq through zakah, and then life changes for them and they become a payer of zakah. So if me and you pay zakah or yab somebody with zakah money and you develop the person from a mustahiq, from an entitled person to zakah to becoming a zakah, isn't that a form of sadaqatul jariyah? Though it is a farad ibadah I have done. Allah subhanahu Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the hadith, if Allah guide one person, la yahdiyallahu bika rajulan wahidan khairu min humrin na'imin. If Allah guide one person, not a person, when Allah guide one person through you, and this is not through your zakah, you guided him by becoming a skilled person, by becoming a muzakki one day, by becoming a good Muslim. And many times the people realize when they come back and they say, it's through zakah, the Muslims helped me, Islam helped me. So if Allah take you as the instrument to develop the person from being a mustahiq, a person who's entitled to zakah, and Allah develop him into a muzakki, to a person paying the zakah, that is the aim of zakah. Like Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu said, don't give a person, if you give a person a fish, you will feed him for a day. But if you teach him how to fish and give him a fishing rod, you will feed him for a lifetime. Zakah is a development and transformation tool by making sure that we develop a person. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when people came to ask for yab at the Baytul Mal, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu gave him an axe. You go chop your wood and then you sell your wood, and that was transforming them from a mustahiq to a muzakki. You look at the examples of how SANZAF transform people through the zakah of the community or the zakah of South Africa. We encourage ECD early learning development. The sooner that a person become developed from young age in a correct way, the chances that he will come out on top is almost 80 to 90%, if not 100%. So SANZAF always start helping from as young the person is, coming from an underprivileged area, coming from a poor area. So we give them quality early learning development, and that makes it easier for them to become something in life. Secondly, skills development. Everybody is not made to go to tertiary education. Everybody's mind is not there, but creating or causing him to have a skill be the sabab of him having a skill so that he can become a skilled worker, and then from a skilled worker looking after his own family, looking at his broader family, and as life goes on, then start paying zakah, because the more we develop the people, the lesser poor people will be in our community. SANZAF also through bursaries for tertiary education, for university, for colleges, making this person, it's only about matric. In matric, you might get the job nowadays, but it's not really a worthwhile job. And now, taking the child through university, make sure we pay his bursary, his studies, make sure he goes somewhere in life. And then it's like investing in one person for 4 or 5 years, up till 7 years. Alhamdulillah, SANZAF has developed many medical students that today are medical practitioners. But they came from a poor area. Somehow they now, through SANZAF's through Zakah of the community, where SANZAF was the administrators of it, and then they start their own life. Nowadays, we can have statistics of people that has done so much towards themselves. We did the financial part, they did the effort, and that made them becoming a professional, also becoming a payer of zakah. It's not payback time, but it was for their development. They developed themselves, they developed the broader family, and now the one son can look after himself and his family. He can even look after the parents in a better community where his other nephews and nieces can become better Muslims, and also bringing them up or growing up in a better and a more beautiful society. Let's look at accountability and responsibility within zakah. Remember, each person is responsible for things he does, and also for the contract to manage his own things. كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. The words of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All of you are responsible, and you will be asked about your responsibility. To calculate your zakah is your responsibility. To make sure that your zakah goes to the right people is also your responsibility. To make sure that the onus of calculating and distributing your zakah is my and your own responsibility. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran that your contract between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَأَوْفُوا بِالْعُقُودِ. Remember, I am giving you a responsibility of your life. It is your responsibility to look after your ibadah. It is your responsibility to make sure your ibadah is correct, insha'Allah. You know, we are saying that zakah is a responsibility of the payer. And also, it's important that with zakah, is some sort of discharge of your zakah is your responsibility, the correct amount, the correct manner, and also the correct guardianship. Even if you give it to somebody to distribute your zakah, you must make sure that you does it in the best way. From now on, inshallah, we will give over to Maulana Ibrahim Mahabuti that do the fiqh of zakah, and shukran for the participants for the listening and hearing. We'll take questions after Maulana Ibrahim's presentation, inshallah.
وأصلي وأسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Firstly, shukran to Malana for that comprehensive overview in terms of the spiritual dynamics of zakah as well as the maqasid. These are important elements that encompass the entire understanding of zakah. You know, we cannot just jump into the fiqh. The fiqh is the form of the zakah, and the spiritual and the inner dynamics are quite important, because every act of ibadah that we do within the religion, there has to be an element of understanding why do we do it. You know, what is the intent? You know, khalisan liwajhillah. So hence your overview and the outline that you gave is quite important, Mulana. So I've been tasked for today to deal with certain fiqh aspects related to zakah. You know, as we all know, that zakah, the topic of zakah can sometimes be very intimidating. And for the simple reason that it's because it is something that is carried out once a year, and it is only carried out by a certain group of believers of the ummah who reach a certain threshold of wealth in their possession. Hence, people tend to not revise or go into the books of zakah quite often. So platforms of this nature are very, very important, you know, knowledge sharing. And when you look at zakah in comparison to other acts of ibadah, for example, you look at your salah, you look at fasting, you look at hajj, and so forth. You look at iman. These are more personal acts of ibadah. They affect the individual alone. Whereas if you look at zakah, why it is so important to continuously have platforms of this nature and revisit the study of zakah is because zakah has got many social implications. You know, it does not only relate to the individual between him and Allah, it's got social implications, it's got economic implications. What is the impact of zakah? Hence, you will find that there's continuous research and study being done by contemporary scholars as to are we really achieving the maqasid of the zakah? You know, this important pillar of Islam that Allah has put in place, are we achieving impact? Are we making inroads? Are we maximizing the potential of zakah? Hence, it is very, very important that we do not become lax or take it for granted that, you know what, I'm not a zakah scholar, so for me, it's not important to study about zakah. Like I say, it's got far-reaching implications, and we appreciate, you know, TAIF as well as our organization, SANZAF, for collaborating on this very beautiful initiative. So for me, just to go into some of the basic aspects and fiqh issues related to zakah, what's very, very important before paying zakah is that one has to have an intention to pay zakah. All right? So we know as Muslims that there's voluntary charity as well as there's zakah. Zakah is a very specific type of charity prescribed by the Quran, prescribed by the example and teaching of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if you paying zakah, as an example, you cannot just give a random charity today. You know, like in South African currency, if you gave 200 rands today as a voluntary charity, or you did not make an intention to say, this is zakah, you cannot turn around tomorrow and say the 200 rand that I paid yesterday was to cover my zakah. When you're giving out zakah, there has to be an intention to say, this is my obligatory zakah that I'm paying. So very, very important for the zakah giver or the potential zakah giver to understand that you have to have an intention. It's just like similar to other acts of ibadah as well in Islam. I mean, if you just stand like how a person would normally stand in the salah position, but you do not make intention to say, I'm performing salah. You're just doing the motions, you're just doing the acts. That is not considered to be salah. So in a similar manner, for your zakah to be fulfilled, you have to be very clear and intentional that I'm paying zakah. If you stay hungry at any time during the day, even if it's exactly like how it is from the time of pre-dawn until sunset, but you do not make intention that I'm fasting, that is just staying away from food, right? So let us not take this aspect of intention for granted. It is a fundamental need that before you pay your zakah, it's important that that intention is made. And before the intention of the intention, the very most important intention is making the intention that, Ya Allah, I am paying the zakah as a manner of submission and obedience to you. All right? Khalisan liwajhillah. I'm not paying zakah because I want to prove to anybody, to show to anybody. This is when Allah will increase the barakah in our wealth. Allah increases the barakah in our health. Allah increases the barakah in our well-being, and we receive maximum reward from Allah. As in numerous ayats of the Quran, Allah speaks about this, provided it is done for what? Khalisan liwajhillah, for the sake of Allah. But it's important to understand that it is not a prerequisite that your intention has to be verbally articulated. If you have the intention in your heart, because the place of intention is in the heart, it's not what you are uttering. So it is sufficient for you to make the intention in your heart, be conscious about what you are doing, and then that's where your zakah or your act of ibadah becomes fulfilled. So like we say, zakah, it's almost like an exact science. You cannot just take out random money from your pocket or from your drawer or from wherever you're keeping your money and paying ad hoc money all over the show without doing a thorough calculation when your time of the calculation comes about. You know, like Molana explained in previous slides, that there is a lunar month and a date for each potential zakah payer for them to pay that. As we go on with the fiqh of zakah, those aspects will be explained, inshallah. But for now, it is very, very important to understand that you have to be exacting in the calculation of your zakah. Don't just guess, you know. You take your assets that you have, your liabilities and so forth, as the method of it will be shown to us as we go along. It is very important that you have to do the calculation. It's not something that you have to do without thorough calculation. Very important to understand, no conditions are placed on zakah for the mustahiq. So I'm a zakah payer, right? I'm giving zakah to an individual, but at the same time, let's say as an instance, I'm paying zakah to a particular organization. Let's say I'm paying zakah to SANZAF as an instance. I'm paying zakah to TAIF as instance. I'm paying that zakah, but then I make a condition that you have to pay school fees for my child, you know, or I derive some sort of benefit. You know, I'm placing some conditions that if I'm giving you the zakah, you must wash my car. You know, some sort of a direct or indirect benefit that you are getting by you paying the zakah. So the muzakki, you have to be very, very, very careful with regards to that. Zakah is purely for the sake of Allah. It is for the benefit of the beneficiary, the receiver. Don't derive benefit by virtue of you giving zakah to someone. Very important to understand that zakah is paid cyclically, meaning every year when your period comes, you know, like we mentioned, the month, according to the Islamic calendar, and the date comes, every year you make your calculations and you pay your zakah. You make your calculations, you pay your zakah. It is done every cycle. You know, some people have this misconception, you know, they would ask you the question, from my salary, how much zakah do I pay? So they have this thinking that every time you get paid on a monthly basis, your salary, you must pay zakah from there. No, that type of money that you give from your salary, maybe it's just voluntary charity which you're giving. It is good, but it is not zakah. There's no obligation for you to pay zakah on your salary. That is just zakah is paid on your additional savings when the date when you are supposed to be calculating your zakah comes in. So very important for people to understand. It is done once a year. It is done on the date of your calculation. Also, the principle of tamlik, quite a lot of scholars are of the opinion that when you're giving zakah, the transfer of ownership has to go to the mustahiq, the person who is eligible to receive zakah. So you give them full charge of the zakah without any controls, without dictating to them what they need to do with the zakah, an important principle of zakah. We move on to the distribution framework, which is very, very important. Right? These are the contents of what we're going to cover. I don't want to go through each one. I'll just go straight into the framework of it. So one of the most important and fundamental frameworks related to zakah is the aspect of who is liable to pay zakah. When does an individual become liable to pay zakah? You would be surprised many people are not aware when they become liable to pay zakah. Hence, you would find that quite a lot of people only eventually realize about the importance of zakah when the month of Ramadan kicks in. Because I think naturally throughout the world globally, the Ummah has, there's this thing where the aspect of zakah, there's a lot of consciousness around zakah. Then a person wakes up from their slumber and realizes, you know what, for years I've not been paying zakah. Whereas they were probably liable to pay zakah 3, 4, 5 months ago. All right. So it is, people are not aware. So it's very, very important for people to be constantly being taught the knowledge of zakah, like how they are taught the knowledge of salah and other acts of ibadah. So the jurists agree that zakah is compulsory on surplus wealth of every Muslim who is sane and who owns the minimum nisab. And as those who are zakah practitioners or zakah scholars may know, that the Hanafi madhab has an added a condition which they add, which is bulugh, meaning you have reached the age of puberty. Just like how someone, when you reach the age of puberty, salah and all other acts start becoming compulsory. They add that as a condition. So puberty, bulugh, and sanity are similar, because if a person is insane, they're not in a state of awareness that they must pay zakah. But the majority of the scholars, the fiqh scholars, Imam Shafi, Ibn Hanbal, Rahmatullah alayhi, Imam Malik say, sanity and bulugh are not conditions for you to pay zakah. Zakah is charged on the mal. The zakah is taken on the mal, on the wealth that the individual possesses. So if they're in a state of insanity or they have not reached puberty, that does not mean they should not pay zakah because they have the wealth. I mean, you'll find some young people who are millionaires by a very young age, who are billionaires at a very young age. So their argument is that money is just sitting, and the money is the right of the what you call it, the poor within the Muslim community. It is the right of people who do not have. But you just packing money away, waiting for bulugh or waiting for the person to reach sanity, that disadvantages the poor. So yeah, that is the difference between the Hanafi and majority of the scholars, where most would lean towards let's rather take, contemporary scholars would say, let's rather take the zakah, irrespective of whether the person is sane or not. It is an individual responsibility. For example, the wife may not expect that the husband must be paying zakah on her behalf, unless it is a mutual agreement where the husband says, out of my free will, out of my virtue to you, out of my kindness, whatever wealth you have, don't worry about it. But you told the person is well informed and they understand that you are paying zakah on their behalf. So wife or husband and vice versa. So it has to be there has to be an understanding and knowledge that the zakah is being paid for the individual. who may receive zakah, right? So we know quite well any zakah practitioner or any zakah scholar, you would be very shortcutting yourself if you are not aware of this verse in Surah Tawbah, which outlines and highlights the individuals who are eligible to receive zakah. Where Allah Azza wa Jal states, إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل. And then Allah says, فَرِيضَةً مِّنَ اللَّهِ. This is a prescription prescribed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah is all-knowing, all-wise. So these are the categories which have been put in place by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explicitly in the Quran. These are the poor, the needy, administrators of zakah. They generally use the term amil, amilun. This is what they use for administrators of zakah. Reconciliation of hearts, those mu'allafati qulubuhum, to soften people's hearts towards Islam. For those in bondage, people who are enslaved or they are very in a compromised situation where they are kept captive and so forth. Those in debt, someone who, unfortunately, due to some unforeseen circumstances, have fallen into a debt situation, and then fi sabilillah, in the cause of Allah, and then the wayfarer, someone who is might be traveling and they happen to have not enough means to complete their journey, or money gets stolen. Someone who's a traveler, normally sometimes as a traveler, you may get yourself into some difficult situations, even though back at home, you have money. Important to understand that. I wouldn't want to go into explaining each one of these categories because that is for discussion for another day and it will take time. So generally, anyone who's a zakah practitioner, you would find that there's a lot of differences of opinion with regards to these categories. This is why you would find various organizations in various countries and in various communities, they would sort of have a policy. Because of the differences of opinion that arise with regards to these categories, they would rather have an organizational policy that determines what do we consider as mu'allafati qulubuhum. What do we consider? They'll have a panel of muftis or a Sharia audit committee, like how SANZAF would have, that would decide, do we even consider the category of fi sabilillah? That is up to every organization, every community, based on their research, based on what their muftis would advise them to do. And that's how they would formulate a policy and act according to that. Policy is like a fatwa, because fatwa changes based on circumstance, based on the situation, based on time, based on context. Hence, you cannot really give a clear fatwa for a different context that is not aligned to yours. Who may receive zakah? Sometimes people want to understand amongst so we've outlined the various categories or individuals who may receive zakah. So people would say, can my grandparents receive zakah? Can my parents receive zakah from me? Can my children receive zakah from me? Can my grandchildren receive zakah from me? Right? Can my uncles, brothers, and so forth receive zakah from me? And it is understandable why this may be a misconception, because if you look at grandparents and children, these are people that by right of the Sharia are people whom you're supposed to be taking care of by default. So by you giving them zakah, you are actually indirectly benefiting yourself, meaning you're taking the zakah money that was supposed to be going to the poor and you're now making it as nafaq towards your parents or your children. So this is why it is not permissible for your grandparents and parents. This, in an easy way for you to understand, that anybody who is your ascendant is not supposed to receive zakah from you. And anybody who is your descendant is not supposed to be receiving zakah from you. But everybody else that is lateral on the sides, your cousins, your uncles, and so forth, your relatives, they may receive zakah from you. Of course, obviously, provided they are not wealthy themselves, they are not rich, you provide zakah, the assistance of zakah to them. Now, who may not receive zakah? Obviously, anybody who's rich, wealthy, they have money of their own, they're well-to-do. You cannot be giving zakah at those people at the expense of people who are poor. Those capable but not willing to work, the Prophet ﷺ would discourage or refuse to give zakah to young men who are capable, who are able-bodied, who can do and earn and work, because it's not a nice thing to be constantly going to be asking for free things when you have the capacity and the capability to earn your own livelihood. Look for a skill. Empower yourself with some sort of a trade, like was the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, that you would encourage someone to rather chop firewood and make a livelihood through that, as opposed to continuously be depending on handouts. Sometimes, unfortunately, the receivers of zakah are not cognizant of that. They just take it as an opportunity for me to receive free money or free goods. It is not the right mindset to keep a person into. So they need to be educated with regards to this. Right? Also, disbelievers who are against Islam, people who are, they are a threat to Islam. It's not good for us to be giving zakah to those type of individuals. When we're speaking about children, parents, and wives of the zakah payer, that's what I've briefly highlighted in the previous slide. So you cannot give zakah to your children, you cannot give zakah to your parents, you cannot give zakah to your wife, although there's a slight difference of opinion where Imam Ash-Shafi rahmatullah alayhi would say the wife technically is allowed to give zakah to the husband based on the argument that the wife is not responsible for the husband, as opposed to when you look at it from the other way, where the husband is responsible to provide to provide for the wife, to look after the wife. So there's just a slight difference of opinion with regards to that. Other considerations when distributing zakah. We spoke about the principle of tamlik, making the individual who is receiving the zakah to be the malik and the owner of zakah. Right? Yeah, that's one principle. Condition of distribution. No conditions may be placed on the mustahiq. We highlighted on that you do not give zakah and then place conditions on the mustahiq. Declaration of zakah. It is not necessary that when you're giving zakah that you announce to the individual that this money that I'm giving to you, or this bag of meal, it is zakah money. It is not necessary to make a declaration. If you have made your assessment and you've got some sort of comfort and feeling that this person is destitute, they need whatever type of intervention in their lives, it is sufficient. You don't have to tell them it is zakah. And then there's an element of zakah which relates to local distribution. So majority of the scholars, whether it be the classical as well as contemporary scholars, encourage quite hugely that zakah should be given locally. Zakah should be localized, because as you know from the injunction of the Prophet ﷺ, that zakah is collected from the people of the community and given back to the people of the community. But with that said, that does not mean it is haram for zakah to cross the borders at times, because sometimes there may be something that a calamity happens, something unforeseen. It is not now it is haram. It is just a matter of preference, because zakah is meant to build a community. It's meant to build and establish a community. So you refuse elements of imbalances within a community. So a community you may consider to be your town, your city, and broadly speaking, maybe even your country, the well-being of your country and so forth. But if there is sometimes a need that the zakah money be transferred to another country because of a desperate situation, or sometimes because of a strategic imperative, it is okay to consider that type of a thing. Framework of zakah. All shurut must be present before zakah is due on wealth, irrespective of worth of your wealth. So there's conditions like we mentioned in the beginning. There's shurut that are in place before you give your zakah. Right? We will speak about the shurut shortly. Right? And then calculation of zakah. Zakah is calculated on your personal wealth. Zakah is calculated on your business and partnerships and so forth. Zakah is also calculated on your various categories of wealth. What do we mean by various categories of wealth? You may have wealth in the form of gold. You may have wealth in the form of agricultural produce. You may have wealth in terms of cash, cash money. You may have wealth in terms of investments and savings and so forth. So when you're doing a Zakah calculation, it's very, very important that you look at all of these categories. Don't neglect one category and, by so doing, neglecting to pay Zakah on that particular category. If you do not pay Zakah on one category or asset, that does not mean that other Zakah is not levied on the rest of your wealth. So for example, on your personal assets, maybe a car, you do not have to pay Zakah on that. But that does not mean you don't have to pay Zakah on your business, your business merchandise and so forth. That does not mean you do not have to pay Zakah on your savings and those type of stuff. When Zakah is, okay, when is Zakah payable, right? We spoke about the shurut in the previous slide, right? So these are some of the shurut which is important that we pay attention to, right? Like I mentioned, sometimes people are not aware when and how to pay Zakah. What are the shurut? The first one is ownership, then it's growth, then it's nisab, then it's hold. Let's just try to break down this shurut for us, right? So that we have got a clear grasp and understanding what we mean. When we say ownership, one must have full ownership of the zakatable assets before zakah is due on you, right? And ownership must be absolute. So the test question that you need to ask yourself, you may be having money, but the question that you need to ask yourself, are you able to dispose of the asset freely, or was the investment made voluntarily? You ask this question, and if your answer is positive, that means one condition already is fulfilled. I can give you a simple example of ownership. Sometimes you've got money, right? But that money you've placed it, you've given it as a collateral for some debt that you borrowed or for some reason. You don't have, once money is a collateral, you don't have full ability to dispense of that money, to do anything. That money is in the hands of someone else. So when you're doing your zakah calculation, you don't bring that money in because you cannot do anything. Another example, you would find people who are paying insurance. Technically, when you are paying insurance, it is as if you are putting money in a safe situation that when a calamity or a situation of, an unpleasant situation happens to you, you are able to access that money in order to get back on your feet. But you don't, generally, the insurance company, they don't give you ownership of that money. You don't have control of that money. So you don't calculate the savings or the money that you've been paying over the years in that insurance and so forth. So this is a very clear example of what do we mean by ownership. And sometimes maybe there's money that you have already, as a business, you are running a business, money that you have already paid out. You have paid out for your debt purposes, you have paid it out to your creditors, but when you look at your bank account, that money has not cleared. It is still showing there. So when you're calculating your zakah, you may ask yourself your question, this money is still showing there, but that money has already been allocated for something else. So you do not put that money along your assets as a matter of calculation. Okay, let's move on to the next one, which is growth. Growth is an asset which is subject to zakah if it has the potential to actually grow or increase. What do we mean about this? So, by this point here, this money, this asset that you have, it is something that actually naturally increases. Like, for example, agricultural produce naturally increases by themselves. If you've got livestock, it increases by itself, right? Or you've got certain assets that have a potential to increase. What do we mean it has a potential to increase? This means you've got business merchandise, your stock, So that's why generally you will hear scholars stating that zakah is paid on items that are very liquid. Generally they are very easily to exchange for monetary value, like your gold, your silver, your business merchandise, your cash, and so forth. They either grow by themselves or they have a potential to be invested and start growing. You look at those items, and then once you have those items, cash as well. Cash has the potential to be invested in business, and then you consider it to be part of your Zakah asset. Nisab. We know the Nisab that is calculated, the standard of Nisab, which the silver standard is 612.36 grams. And then the gold standard is 87.48 grams. So these are the standards that are generally used to determine whether the persons who has savings have reached a level, the threshold of Nisab, which obligates them now to start paying Zakah. If you've got below Nisab, you've got savings below Nisab, you've got money below Nisab, you've got merchandise below Nisab, that does not make you liable to pay Zakah. So as you know, there's a differences of opinion with regards to whether do we consider the gold Nisab or we consider the silver Nisab. So a lot of the scholars would rather consider silver Nisab based on the argument that, you know what, it gives more people the opportunity to be Zakah payers, as well as gives more opportunity for people who are in need to get money and to be assisted from that particular. So in South Africa, the standard that we use for Nisab is the silver standard. But with that said, there may be countries or regions that use a different standard. They use the gold standard based on their scholarly research, based on what the scholars in the country advocate and encourage. I mean, that is up to every region and community. But generally, the advice or the encouragement is to consider the silver Nisab because it is lower as compared to the gold one, which creates more opportunity. Let's move on to the whole. The whole, like we mentioned, you remember in the previous slides, we mentioned that Zakah is paid cyclically. Every cycle, Zakah is paid. So it's very, very important. That's why the Zakah education has to be continuous. It is not something that should be done only once a year or twice a year. So people are conscientized all the time that, you know what, I may be saving money. By the time my money that I'm saving reaches the threshold of Nisab, it means now my whole begins. What do I mean by my whole begins? It means my date of consideration of paying Zakah begins today, you know. So we are in Sha'ban right now, you know, the 15th of Sha'ban. It begins today. I should not say I'm going to wait for Ramadan just because everybody is paying their money. I mean, the Zakah in Ramadan, I must also wait for. No, if you are rich, that means your date of calculation starts today, and then the next year on the 15th or 16th of Sha'ban, that's when your date of paying Zakah starts. So every individual Zakah payer has got their own whole. They've got their own cycle at which they pay Zakah. Let's give some illustrations here. I think these would help. Just to give a more understanding. Let's say Muharram, from Muharram right up to Dhul Qa'dah. The person started with savings of 10,000 rands, right? And then in between, they were getting 5,000 rands and so forth. 5,000 rands every month they were saving. But in between, they were getting other income from other avenues. They were getting 10,000 rands along. And then eventually, they even managed to get 100,000 rands. Probably they received some inheritance of some sort, right? So the savings kept on increasing. From Muharram, the savings kept on increasing. And just, it's very, very important. Look at the savings here at Muharram. It was 10,000 rands, meaning it was above the Nisab. All right? They started saving money, which is above the Nisab, 10,000 rands. And then it kept on increasing until it reached a position where it was 200,000 rands. So the next year in Muharram, they have to look at, let's say it was on the 1st of Muharram, when they started saving this 10,000 rands. The next year on the 1st of Muharram, they have to look at how much they have. On what do they pay their Zakah? They pay their Zakah on the 200,000 rands. And then how do you do it? The 200,000 rands, you multiply it by a 2.5%, and that gives you the amount of Zakah that you need to pay. So what happened in between, that maybe in 1 month you save less, 1 month you save more, You don't regard all of that. The most important that you consider is that when you started saving and when you ended saving, that's what's important. You look at your start and you look at your end, keeping in mind your date as well. And then you do your calculation when your date comes and appears again. Finally, so when you do your Zakah calculations, our sister Feiruz in the next sessions, she'll go in depth with regards to how you do your calculation. But this was just an overview. So, but in a nutshell, zakatable assets minus your liabilities. You've calculated, you've got some gold, you've got some business merchandise, you've got some properties that you are selling, you've got, you've got some agricultural produce, you've got cash in the bank, all of that you put together and you minus your liabilities. For example, as a business individual, there may be creditors, people that you're owing to people for the stock that you purchase from them. There may be some debts that you are liable for. You minus all your liabilities, monies that you owe, and then eventually what you have left over, if that is equal or more than the nisab, that means now you are liable to pay your zakah. And you calculate your zakah based on the 2.5%, the 2.5% principal calculation that you have been taught by the Prophet ﷺ. Yeah, that's it from my side in terms of what I needed to cover for today. Assalamu alaikum. What happens if a portion of advanced zakah has been paid before year ends? Later, I'm found that I didn't have enough funds or became eligible to pay zakah at the completion of 1 year term instead of taking a loan to bear the expenses. In this case, that portion of advanced zakah paid will go under which fund? Sadaqah, khairat, or something else? Maulana Hashim, would like to take this question, or should I take the question?
Inshallah. First of all, when a person make a mistake, the hadith of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, rufi al-qalamu an khata wa nisyan. Allah has lifted the pen of those who makes mistakes or forgets. So yes, Allah will forgive you because your intention was to pay the correct amount. Unfortunately, you didn't pay the amount. So now if you do pay it with the intention of qada, then it becomes jaiz, permissible to pay it back. Never should we think that Allah stands with a whip to see who pays correctly or who pays incorrectly. According to your intention, Allah will reward you for every deed that you are doing. So first have husni dhan in Allah, good thinking in Allah, right? Secondly, rectify as you can rectify according to your ability. It will still be considered as zakah.
Shukran for that answer, Mulana. Okay, moving on to the next question. Assalamu alaikum. Could you please describe what is bad death?
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So you have your 90 days account, you have your 60 days account, you've got your 30 days account, and the person after 90 days, he might not pay me. He might not pay me. So that becomes a bad debt. So when the money is not in your hands, again, have husni dhan in Allah, have good thinking in Allah. When the person then pays me, I only pay zakah on that money. But if it doesn't pay me...
Yes, Malana, apologies just to interject on that. I think they're just asking with regards to say su'ul maut, what you mentioned, like a person dies a bad death. They're not referring to bad death.
A bad death. In different ways.
Yeah, like you mentioned.
I understood wrong. A bad death. A bad death can be in different ways. Doesn't mean if a person drowned, it's a bad death. Doesn't mean when people look at a bad death is what the human mind see. I might die in a bathroom, in a toilet, right? Or I might die doing an act, an illegal act, or a haram act. And then in that situation, I passed away, or Malak al-Maut take my ruh, in a bad place or at a place where I should not have been. I will not die. If I pay my zakah, Allah will protect me from dying at a place which is bad, like a casino, like a shabin, like at a brothel. That is a bad death, a real bad death. Because even if you weren't involved in it, it will be assumed, what are you doing there? So that becomes the bad death. But the place of death and how you die, in what state of mind or state of action you were, that is a bad death.
Shukran for that, Jazakumullah khairan. The next question, which says, does SANZAF provide online training for ECD? I think it's not directly related to the question and zakah and so forth. They're just asking, does SANZAF provide online training for ECD?
First of all, SANZAF doesn't do the training itself. They support the ECD training, but they will do it as a bursary or as a skills development through a resource like Northlink, like any other college where they does it online, and SANZAF will help you to obtain that certification.
Shukran. The next question says, can Maulana please share the dua that must be recited after paying zakah? I mean, I don't know if there's a specific dua after paying zakah. This individual is just,
Okay, this dua is a general dua after doing any good deed. This dua is an ayah of the Quran, which we do generally after any good deed. Alhamdulillahi alladhi hadana lihada wa ma kunna linahtadiya lawla an hadana Allah. Alhamdulillahi alladhi hadana lihada wa ma kunna linahtadiya lawla an hadana Allah. Thank you to Allah, thanks to Allah, praise to Allah who has guided me to do this. And if it was not for his guidance, we would not have been guided to do this good act of ibadah.
Shukran for that, Maulana. The next question the person asks, is there an opportunity for a virtual internship to learn how the zakah examples you've shared are managed by SANZAF? I suppose this individual probably may be running their own organization. They just want an understanding of, with regards to the ECD, the bursary. Probably is there an opportunity where they can access the mechanism, the internal workings and the know-how of how is this practically done, in terms of maximization of zakat distribution.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. You can go to our website, you will get the zakat calculation, ask the Maulana, and you'll get it. You can also go on our website to see how we do things. And if not, our offices are open anytime through our email, through our website to ask it. And SANZAF, alhamdulillah, like in most of our organizations, we don't have copyright over this. Ilm should be shared as far as possible to everyone in this ummah of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam.
The person asks why the concept of giving zakah comes during one year to Ramadan. Obviously, you've answered that, Maulana, based on the fact that, the month of Ramadan is considered to be a very virtuous month. There's a lot of virtue and encouragement during the month of Ramadan. And people feel, if I give in the month of Ramadan, there's more barakah, the rewards are multiplied, which are concepts which are very clearly highlighted in the hadith and the practices of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Hence by default, people just assumed that zakah is paid in Ramadan. But like Maulana mentioned and made it clearly, and we also, when I was discussing with regards to your whole, that this is not necessarily supposed to be that way, that zakah attention is only given during the month of Ramadan. It is an act of ibadah, just like all other acts of ibadah, which people should be made conscious of throughout the entire year. And then they're saying, kindly share the slides. Can we have the slides for the presentation? I don't know, brother Brother Ahsan. I don't know if
Inshallah, Sheikh, inshallah, those people who are attending these sessions, all 5 sessions, inshallah, they'll be receiving a certificate from SANZAF and TAIF collaboratively, and will be receiving the recordings and presentation, inshallah.
Whether Zakah is a third or fourth pillar of Islam. So Zakah is a third pillar of Islam. The other one is asking, how can technology improve the efficiency and transparency of Zakah collection and distribution in modern societies? Certainly, Sister Rabia, that you're asking the question, technology, AI, and so forth, they've got great potential in terms of efficiency, transparency, governance, and so forth in terms of, because if you've got good technological means and tools to disperse your Zakah, means the overheads that are incurred in the distribution of the zakah are going to be much lesser. It means identification and sifting of recipients is going to be much easier. So certainly, adopting technology and modern scientific tools to make zakah more efficient and cost-effective, these are things that are considered globally, as well as SANZAF as well is taking up the challenge. It is something that is important, and we continuously doing a study and adoption of these methods. Assalamu alaikum, shukran for presentation. One of the common misconception about zakah is that it is a one-time payment. How should we fulfill this obligation for savings that are inaccessible until retirement, such as pension savings? Shukran. So Malana, if you would like to take on this. So she's saying, obviously every year you have to pay your zakah, but some savings that you have, they are locked into a savings account, and you probably don't have liquid cash to be paying your zakah. This person is asking, how should we fulfill zakah in that way, from that perspective?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So when a person have your provident fund and your pension fund, which is part of your employment contract, so you are not the malik, you are not the owner of it. It is part of you being put into an employment. You must have a 5% or 10% contribution to your pension fund or to your provident fund. That money is not zakatable because you are not you don't have complete control over the money. In the other one, where you have a retirement annuity, you by choice put the money there for one day when you are retiring. That money is zakatable. So I don't have the cash flow, the cash to pay for it. Remember that your intention should always be that I want to pay zakah. Your intention should be there. The hadith of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, niyatul mu'min khairu min amalihi. The intention of a believer is better than his action. So I intend to pay it, but I don't have it now. But I should keep a record of the monies as my retirement annuity is increasing and is becoming a bigger amount. I should keep control of it and make sure when my money is paid out, I will still pay zakah. But remember, intention should be there, number one. Number two, also embrace that it is not your money because it is zakah. It belongs to the poor and the needy. It's the right of the poor and the needy. So when the time comes after 10 years and after 5 years, and now you see the big amount, don't now say, I look for excuse or hila, any trick to get out of it. Maulana, at that time I wasn't so clued up with zakah, and I didn't know this and I didn't know that. Remember, when you say that I'm going to pay it, your intention is to pay it. It must be embraced by yourself that yaqinan, I must know, embrace it, that I must pay it because it is not part of my wealth, rather the right of the poor and the needy.
Shukran for that answer, Malana. The next question is zakah payable on gold being used by women for their beauty decoration purposes. please. So just quickly, obviously there's a different, the ulama scholars are split in different opinions with regards to this. Those according to the Shafi madhab, stating that if a woman has jewelry, decoration that they use for a personal beauty and so forth, that jewelry is not zakatable. Whereas according to the Hanafi madhab, irrespective of whether the jewelry is for decoration, for your beautification, you pay zakah on that. So it will be advisable that you consult your local scholars, your mufti. They'll be closer to your situation and advise you accordingly, inshallah. So yeah, that's it. Because sometimes there is a situation where some scholars would say, although they adopt the opinion of saying that it is for decoration and beautification, but sometimes you'll find someone having excessive gold that is for beautification. Now, in that case, do we still maintain the status quo to say you don't pay zakah on that? So those type of consideration need us to address your situation, probably have a closer look and give a direct fatwa if you go onto the SANZAF website and maybe ask Maulana. On a case-to-case basis, you might just get an answer accordingly. The next question says, if on the asset side, I consider the entire financing portfolio, I lost that question. If on the asset side, I consider the entire financing portfolio as a zakatable asset, can I, on the liability side, consider the entire customer accounts as a deduction, regardless of their due dates? Customer accounts, so that means this individual they're running a business and they've got their zakatable assets, and there's customers who are owing them money. Yeah, customers who are owing them. Am I understanding the question correctly? On the liability side, consider the entire customer accounts as a deduction. Regardless of the...
May I carry on, Maulana?
Yes, you can. You want to answer that one, Maulana? Yeah, I'm saying, do you understand the question?
Yeah, I understand the question, Maulana.
Okay, yeah, you can proceed then, Maulana, and answer it.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So the assets is all zakatable, so you may account with it. Zakah is always free of liability. So I must pay my utility bills. Do I pay all the utility bills? Yes, I pay the utility bills. Do I pay that, your rates and tax? Yes, I pay that in full. Must I pay the maintenance of it, or the money that we have used for particular building perhaps? Do I deduct it from it as a liability? Yes, your full liability. But if you have a bond or a bond of the asset, that is only 1 month, because only the bank 1 month, every month is installment. So you can only deduct 1 month from as a liability, and not the whole bond as your liability.
Okay. And okay, just to add on that, Maulana, if the sister is also saying whether debtors are a liability, I mean, are they an asset or a liability? It's important to remember that debtors, customers who owe you money, they become an asset to your business. It's not money that you should deduct. In fact, it's money that you should add to be part of your pool of your zakah payment. Just in a gist, and probably, obviously, if you want a further clearer answer, again, we refer you to our website, and we may answer your question specifically. Brother Hassan, I see the questions are just keep on pouring, and I'm afraid that and I see some hands also raising. I don't know if we continue. It looks like we won't even go through all of them. I don't know what's your suggestion. Should I just continue taking them on?
Okay. The interesting thing is that if you have time, then we can continue. But if you think that time doesn't allow, your namaz time is closed or something, then we can stop them. Perhaps we can type the answers later on.
Maulana Ibrahim, we still got 17 minutes And I think we should be in that way, with the permission of our facilitator. If we take the 70 minutes maximum, it will actually make our time easy and also be a benefit to all those who are asking the question. Let us
Inshallah.
either look for an excuse to assist, then look for an excuse not to assist.
MashaAllah.
Okay,
Just
shukran,
Jazakallah.
Jazakallah. Okay, let me just try to go back to the questions because as they come in, they move.
Because I'm also
Okay,
sharing my screen shortly, just for the context of people understanding. Let's see, there'll be 5 sessions. This is a series of 5 sessions. We are thankful to South African National Zakat Foundation who bring it to you, for the benefit of the Ummah, for the knowledge sharing. So you have 5 sessions over the course of this month, and we'll be finishing in the mid of Ramadan. So you have different sessions. You can ask different questions relevant to that too. Inshallah. Please continue, Sheikh.
Shukran. So the question says, are brothers and sisters under one's care entitled to zakah? Yes, certainly, brother. There's brothers and sisters who are under your care. They're not your ascendants or your descendants. Like we mentioned clearly in our explanation of who may receive zakah, your sisters and your brothers who are relatives to you, they may receive zakah, even though they are under your care. Because Sorry,
Sorry.
yeah, because it's not a Sharia obligation for you to be taking care under for your sisters, and obviously it's something that is encouraged in the Quran, in terms of giving charity to your relatives and so forth. So it's a good act. In fact, if you give zakat to your relatives, it's multiplied much more because it's part of silatul raham as well as a form of charity. So there's no problem in giving zakat to your sisters and brothers, even though they are under your care. Assalamu alaikum. I want to know, is it compulsory for someone to take zakah from a land? Example, he bought a land in intention to sell it after years after. I don't know what do they mean. Is it compulsory to take zakah from a land? He bought a land in intention to sell. So if Brother Ibrahim, I see if you're asking about capital investment, probably you bought land not with the intention. You're not a reseller of land. You're not a reseller of property and so forth. You just bought land as a capital investment. So the general ruling with regards to capital investment is that you do not pay zakah on that land. If this is different from a person who buys and sells property, because that becomes almost like their merchandise. A person who buys and sells land, that becomes their merchandise. But in your situation, you are just saying, this is land you bought, just as because sometimes if you buy land, right now the land may not have much value. You are looking at a long-term investment to say probably in 5 years, 10 years time, this land may fetch quite a significant value. So in that case, it is not considered, the most correct opinion is that capital investment is not considered to be zakatable. Assalam, do you pay on assets that depreciate such as cars?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maulana, that is a good part of Islam. Zakah is not there to make you poor. Zakah is not there based on every belonging to you. Your car, even if you have 10 personal cars, it is not zakatable. That because it's personal, nothing personal becomes zakatable. If you have a car for Sunday afternoon drive, and if you have a car for Monday going to work, and if you have a car for Friday going to buy your takeaways, you don't pay zakah on any personal assets. And that is the beauty of Islam. Islam is not there to make you poorer, rather just to encourage you to always have the idea of sharing your wealth, and only the compulsory amount is a must on you. Anything personal is not zakatable. Anything that you use as a form of business, the capital is not zakatable. Even if you have a hotel, Zakah is not leave it on your hotel, rather than your income, but not on your hotel, because it is your means of making or is a means of creating employment, is a means of you earning your livelihood.
Shukran for that answer, Maulana. Someone says, Mubarak on the informative presentation. Would attendees receive a recording? Okay, that question was answered. Please share presentation as well. Thanks. The question was answered. What about the concept of zakah on the gold, not you for use only? I think that was answered with regards to jewelry. What about the concept of zakah on the gold, not for use only? Obviously, the default nature of gold that you have as savings, whether you're saving it or whatever, if it is just gold, that gold is zakatable. But we made the distinction with regards to women's jewelry and so forth, which is a discussion actually which is going to be unpacked more in the following sessions, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for the presentation. If a person has mixture of assets, what is the basis of nisab? Someone is asking if a person has mixture of assets. So generally, a mixture of assets, agriculture has its own nisab, right? For example, if you are talking about that kind of a thing, the nisab of agriculture has its own type of nisab, and it is paid at harvest time, if you're talking with regards to that. And if you've got livestock has its own nisab, and so forth. And if you've got cash, you've got merchandise, you've got gold, you've got investments, those are generally just calculated in the same manner that if you had 10,000 rands in your bank account, you multiply by 2.5%, and that becomes your zakah that you need to pay. So there's certain assets in the Sharia which are specific, and there's certain assets like your agriculture. For a more detailed, you may email our website, Ask Maulana, and so forth. You'll be given those type of discussions.
It's still coming up.
It's
still coming up in our presentation. It is still coming up in our presentation.
Yes. Is coming up, yeah. Maybe if you're into mining and so forth, that will be discussed, like Maulana states. Yeah. Assalamu alaikum. Whether zakah is on both the male tijara, on the profit from that at the end of the year. So this is again, brother Dr. Ubrin Sajjad. Your question that you are asking requires quite an extensive and focused type of a response here. It seems to me that you may be having the misunderstanding that you only pay zakah on your profits. Just as a short answer, zakah is not paid only of the profits that you made at the end of the year. You pay zakah on all your business merchandise and stock. You do a thorough calculation. With regards to the nitty-gritties and finer details of how that is done, inshallah, in the future sessions, that is going to be answered to you. But if it's an urgent matter, again, you may refer to our brother who is the moderator for today, and they may link you up with someone at SANZAF, and your question may be answered specifically, inshallah. Whether we'll get certificate, yes, you'll get your certificates, inshallah, like Brother Hassan has mentioned. MashaAllah, thank you very much, presentation. Can I set myself a date and pay my zakah? Okay, let me be a bit slow on this one. Can I set myself a date and pay my zakah on that date every year? And calculating my zakah on all my zakatable assets, less zakatable liabilities on that date, irrespective of when any asset or liability started to exist. I don't know if you get that question, Maulana.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Yes, Maulana. A person don't pay zakah on particular assets or particular forms of wealth. It will come, and you pay zakah on your wealth, your total wealth at the time of your whole, the time of your paying zakah every year. But remember, we should calculate our year on the Islamic months, because on the Islamic months is about 10 days lesser than the solar system normally. So when you are due in Muharram, on the 10th of Muharram, or the 5th of Muharram, you every year, your 5th of Muharram or the 10th of Muharram or the 12th of Rabi Awal becomes your zakah date. You can pay it a few days earlier, but it must be at least in that particular month you should pay your zakah. And I think that is the ideas people should keep in, like diarize, like we diarize our webinar, where we diarize our birthday and the wife's birthday and our anniversary. We should also diarize our zakah due date. And because any anniversary, it can only bring a smile for now. But if I diarize my zakah, it is a smile from Allah unto the particular person paying his zakah. But remember, for everything, everything excess wealth which you did not use for a year, that wealth together, whether it is gold, whether it is gold coins, whether it is investments, whether it is shares, whether it is cash in the bank, whether it is your provident, your retirement annuity, all that should be put together as your wealth, and zakah becomes payable from your total wealth.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Among those that are expected to collect zakah, you mentioned, where do we group non-Muslims? Yeah, this person is asking about non-Muslims. Where do you consider? Obviously, non-Muslim is not a category, brother. There's no category amongst the categories of zakah that speaks about non-Muslims being given zakah. Maybe you may be thinking about the category of mu'allafati qulubuhum. Depending on where you are, which country you are, which context on, ulama will either restrict it very much, the scholars, or some will broaden it slightly, but that is very contextual and that is very criteria based, So, but there's no, amongst the 8 categories, there's no category that says specifically non-Muslims. So that is something to consider. But if you want a further discussion again, you may contact us for a broader expansion and a scholarly discussion on that issue, inshallah. Someone says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. One essential skill for Muslims is financial literacy. This helps in accurately recording income and expenses, making it easier to calculate and pay zakah. Why haven't zakah institutions emphasized promoting the skill? So, I mean, you're just saying financial literacy is very important because, like we mentioned in the slides, that zakah is almost like an exact science when you're doing your calculation. So I guess the person is suggesting that it's important for people to have financial literacy along with the zakah training, as opposed to just giving the zakah, training on its own separately. Is there anything you would like to say on that, Maulana?
Carry on, Maulana. You have said it all, but it is about Islam, about that business and accounting literacy, about calculating zakah. Zakah is about, therefore, it is ibadatul maliyah, is a financial ibadah. So you must have some financial literacy about today's life to work out your zakah. Why others don't encourage it, alhamdulillah, at least we are trying to encourage the business literacy and the account literacy so that everybody can benefit and stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, I have tried to inculcate or to educate everybody according to zakah with our financial and business literacy.
Okay, shukran. Brother Jubaid, you asked the question, bad debt is not clear yet. Bad debt means that someone is not paid yet and may not be paid in future. So okay, this question of bad debts, you remember the first question that Maulana was answering was referring to like su'ul, like a bad end, a bad death, which this related to if a person does not pay their zakah, Allah forbid, Allah may give them a death which is not pleasant and which sometimes may be a sign of Allah not pleased with you. With regards to bad debts from an accounting point of view, that will be covered in our following sessions, inshallah, and it will be made clear to you with regards to how do you treat this from a zakah perspective. Please, can you share the slides to the participants? Okay, that's answered. Please share the slides that's answered. What informed the choice of the gold or silver nisab benchmark? Can one switch from one to another as demanded by convenience? You can definitely not do that because Sharia is not about convenience. You know, this year you're feeling I'm paying on the silver. Next year you're feeling I'd rather pay on the gold. If you have been given a fatwa and you've been given, you know, like a ruling, and maybe the contemporary scholars within your region or your country say this is what it is, and you are convinced, you know, based on scholarly research, based on the mufti that you trust, you cannot keep on switching and flipping on convenience because that is a very dangerous type of you know, attitude, and Allah does not like it. And this does not only apply to zakah, it applies to many other aspects related to our religion, where sometimes a person is following a particular madhab, but when they find that it's not convenient right now, they switch on to the next madhab. They keep on flipping and switching. That is tantamount to playing with the commands and the rulings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I think we should be very careful when it comes to that kind of a thing, brother.
Maulana, we have 1 minute left.
Okay. Yeah, there's a whole lot of questions, much more. So maybe we may be able to take 1 or 2 more questions. Slams, what is person is zakatable? They have not a job and they do not receive any income. Then someone gives them some gold jewelry. What do they do in this case? This is Sajida Ibrahim asking. They say they don't have a job, but someone just gives them gold and jewelry and so forth. What's their situation? I think this might be the last question we'll answer for today, Mulana.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. At times, you know, وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. When you are God conscious, Allah makes a way out for you. وَيَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. And Allah gives you rizq from where you can't perceive. Zakah doesn't only come in rands and cents and pounds and dollars. It can also come in gold, you know. So when Allah gives it to you, say rizqu min Allah, it's of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You may use it, you may change it for cash so that you can live a good, dignified life. Take it as a rizqu min Allah, as a rizq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it will be a form for you to change your life, to change your situation from being a mustahiq, from being entitled to zakah, to change you to one day, inshallah, be the payer of zakah. Allah make us from those who always try to hear the good of Islam and follow the good of Islam. May Allah make us those who initiated SANZAF and TAIF, this workshop and this webinar. Allah guide us, Allah keep us protected, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put the right words in the mouth of the speaker so that we may answer the correct answer. Remember, al-Islamu yusrun. Islam is an easy religion. We should make it easy for people to follow so more and more of us can pay zakah in the correct way after hearing the rules and the regulations and the maqasid and the fada'il of zakah. I thank you, and I thank everybody, all the participants, all those organizers, the presenters, Maulana Ibrahim Mahabuti, for your effort also, so that Allah always keep us guided. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم من جميع ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.
Ameen. Jazakallah Shaykh. Thank you very much for your time once again. And thank you very much, Nasr Zakat Foundation for TAIF as well. People who have benefited from the session, thank you very much for joining. Again, last time I'm sharing with the people over here. Presentations will be shared after this series. So there'll be 5 sessions that you can see on the screen. Inshallah, presentation will be shared after that. Recordings will be available after the session, after 2 days of every session, because we do some editing every time to improve the quality, so that you can see and share with your people. We ask people to come, join, invite your family members, benefit from the upcoming sessions. This is a free session for the benefit of the Ummah. Looking forward to see you all in future. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa barakatuh.